Welcome aboard, space fans. I'm Dr. Walk, and you're tuning in to Lift Off with Dr. Walk and Timmy too. Today we rocket into the thrilling realms of space exploration and some stellar innovations. So we do have, 2 weeks is the entire mission for this crew, and the 30 experiments sound like a lot, but a lot of them are related, and a lot of them collect data pre and post flight. So the experiments are not necessarily being conducted when on the mission itself. So they'll collect biomarkers to test different cells and proteins within the body before they leave, and then they'll collect those same types of proteins and cells after they come back and say, okay, what happened? How did they change? How did they morph? What is going on? And studying those changes are going to lead to like diagnoses or prognoses of different types of diseases, cancer, Alzheimer's, Huntington's diseases, things like that. Yeah. Lots of different ones. So 30 sounds like a lot, but I think a lot of it's pre and post stuff that people are doing.
Right. I think they're testing out a new bio tracker on this mission as well, right? They have a lot of people wear these wearable bio trackers. Yeah. They're testing out a ring.
I don't think they're testing out the technology. I think that what they're doing is they're using the ring to come up with a protocol for telemedicine. I think that's what it is. So they wear a ring that you can actually get this ring. I think I don't remember the names. There's different companies, but you get a ring. It's just like your smartwatch, and it will collect your sleep patterns, your heart rate, your heart rate rhythms, your VO2, and I'm sure a couple other things like probably your stress levels or whatever. And then I know sometimes my watch, if I'm doing reports, it says get up, you're being lazy, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm working really hard.
When I'm flying, mine does
that. Does it say it says get up and walk around? I'm like, I can't. Stop. So if you notice, all the crew members have a black ring, so they'll be tracking that data, and then then there's a ground crew that will do telemedicine. So I guess, I'm not sure about this, but what I'm assuming is if you're feeling stress, the telemedicine person can call in and be like, give you a protocol, and I think that's what they're testing. What types of protocols, cognitive test, and things that they can perform to calm you down. And this brings me to another experiment that they're doing. It's the mental economy.
Oh yeah, mental economy.
Is that the one, mental economy protocol? And that one they're doing because on the ISS, when we're doing experiments, the ISS is used as an accelerated test bed. So a lot of times I'll tell my students, just because you might not be interested in space or space travel or finding the next planet, which is, everyone should be excited about that. Some students aren't, okay? That's okay. Sometimes you're not. But if you are excited about medicine and curing cancer or understanding stem cells or anything like that, the reason you want to go to the ISS is because everything that bad happens on Earth happens really, 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 really fast on the ISS. So you can come up with solutions and countermeasures and diagnoses. You can actually even understand early signs of different types of cancers and things by studying what happens to the body in space. So I tell my students it's an accelerated test bed. Okay, so I don't even know where I was going with that.
That's a good way to put it.
Oh, the protocol, the anxiety or whatever. So they're studying your neurons, and they're saying when you are in flight, have you ever been flying an airplane and you get super stressed for some reason? I don't know, does this thunderstorm scare you? Has like a bird ever hit your plane?
Yeah.
That would make me cry.
Yeah.
Does it make you cry? You don't have to say it on TV. He wouldn't admit it anyway. He cries. He cries. Dude, does that bother you though, for real?
Does it bother me? It bothers me because how dangerous it is.
But not that it died? I guess I would be more concerned with the people in my spacecraft than I would be a bird. But when I think about the bird, because everyone's already safe, I'd be like, oh man.
Usually...
He probably thought I was his cousin or something, flying along with him, and it dies.
Yeah, usually it's just a small bird. No, I mean...
Nothing stresses you. But what happens if Okay, tell me what stresses you.
Oh, I had to land in Raleigh-Durham a couple of days ago, and it was 35 knot crosswinds, and
okay, so your neurons right now.
Weather stress.
Okay, weather. So
everything is manageable.
When you are stressed like that, the neurons in your body are not efficient. They are very excited. what do you call it? The cost expenditure is very, very high. You're not being efficient. So what this protocol is coming up with is saying, what cognitive test can I give you to calm you down? How can I keep you at neural efficiency? And if we test it in the ISS, which is an accelerated test bed, you can take those cognitive tests and you know, like when people, I used to do this when I was a kid. If I lose concentration, I would snap my wrist with a rubber band, and if eventually I would stop losing concentration because I didn't want to get snapped. So hopefully they're not going to snap people with rubber bands in space, but don't do this at home, kids. But they give you different types of things to deal with your stress, and they are then going to apply the lessons learned of this protocol to things here on Earth. Maybe pilots, different types of people in the military, maybe, I don't know, what are the stressful things that we do here on Earth? Firefighters, things like that. Yeah, so that's another experiment.
Yeah, that's a good experiment. Yeah, I think they have a lot of interesting experiments going on, and like you mentioned, it's an accelerated test bed, and there's a lot of things that we would like to investigate here on Earth, but we can't do it because we don't have access to microgravity. So up on the ISS, that's one resource that they have that everybody really wants to study. So, and they're taking all these experiments, particularly from Europe. So a lot of these experiments are coming out of Italy and Sweden, and they're finally getting the opportunity to investigate some of these. And
that's what I think another great thing about Axiom. Because now everyone is going to have access to this laboratory.
Right.
It's no longer just, so how many internationals are a part of the space station? So Harmony connects Japan.
Right.
And then we have the US. We also have the Canadian part and the European part, right?
Right, exactly.
Well, Axiom is now saying, well, space is for everyone. And even tourists.
Yeah, tourists.
Yeah. Oh, going back to the spacesuit, why did they change the spacesuit?
Oh, well, I want them to create, so they're testing out a new pressure suit, but what we need is a new extravehicular activity suit as well.
Yeah.
Because
why?
The current NASA requirements are based on the anthropomorphic dimensions of a human being.
That's a really fancy word for how tall you are or your lengths or whatever. And Timmy over here is what, 6'5"?
6'5".
And the suit only fits 6'4".
So somebody needs to get on creating a bigger extravehicular activity.
And Axiom has to do that because you might be a tourist that goes up there.
Right, exactly. So for I don't know what the anthropomorphic dimensions are for their new suits. But I think SpaceX or one of the contractors has just put out a new one that they might use on the first lunar missions to go out on the moon. Yeah.
Are they going to use any type, so another one of the experiments that Axiom 3 crew is conducting is the tactile experiment. So basically they bring up materials and they see how it reacts to different types of radiations. Right? So I wonder if that's why they're doing it.
Yeah.
Do you know how that works up on the ISS?
Yeah, so radiation is a major hazard for space travel. Here on Earth, we're exposed to 2 millisieverts of radiation per year, which is like, some of the harmful radiation from the sun gets through the atmosphere and we're exposed to it. And radiation is bad because it's basically tiny little particles are entering your body and they're colliding with other particles, and it basically can affect the way your cells reproduce, or cell division, which is called cancer, right? So you get radiation can cause cancer, and there's different types of solar radiation. There's SPEs, which we call solar particle events, or GCRs, which is galactic cosmic radiation. And both of them are harmful, but one of them will kill you a lot quicker than the other.
So die really, really fast or die kind of slow. So they really need to find out a material that protects you.
Right. So one of the biggest things that they're looking for is materials that can protect us from harmful radiation in space. And as I mentioned, here on Earth, we're getting 2 millisieverts of radiation per year. Up on the space station, they're getting about 80.
Is it even even throughout? I heard that there are certain CO2 pockets and there are modules that have higher radiation rates than others.
Yes. Yes. So there's a device that they have on the ISS. I believe it's called the Tissue Equivalent Particle Counter, the TEPC, and it's basically it's a dummy. It kind of looks like the torso of a human being, and it's kind of made out
That
of
would
this.
be so freaky to see his torso.
Yeah.
Continue.
It would be kind of freaky.
Like, right? Like, you see a torso, like, oh, there's the torso.
There's the tissue equivalent particle counter. But it's basically made out of this rubber material that simulates human flesh, and it's counting how many particles of radiation are entering and how deep they're going, and what kind of damage that radiation can do to the human body. And they have one that's outside of the ISS to measure how much radiation is outside, and then they have another one inside the ISS, and they move it around from different locations to see how the radiation is penetrating the ISS and what the humans are getting. And they actually use it to measure, okay, what was your dosage of radiation on board during your visit. And like I mentioned, they're getting about 40 times more radiation than we're exposed to here on Earth.
Axiom's gonna have to figure that out, because a lot of when you apply for the astronaut program, I've done that before, they actually prefer people who are a little bit older, because they don't know how is the radiation going to shave years off your life?
Right.
Is it going to affect the fertility? Is it going to affect, like, what is going to happen? So Axiom, if they're going to take up tourists and all these different types of ages and you know, different types of you know, people, astronauts, whatever, they're gonna have to know those things. One of, going back, I remember one of the experiments is Orion, not the constellation. It is ovaries in space. So they are sending up I don't know if they're sending up different types of ovaries, or they're using I don't know how they're going about that. But anyway, they're testing how ovaries change, or how they are affected by microgravity, and then they're going to say, how does that affect fertility? And that type of information is good for two reasons. One, here on Earth, for fertility issues, right? Like if you do IVF or, you know, things like that, like is there an accelerated way? Is there ways that we can improve our processes? And then the second one is, if we're all going to go to Mars and live, what is the first baby going to look like?
Right, yeah.
How does it affect sperm and eggs? And how does that then affect how a baby is developed? Is it going to look like you and I?
Right.
Or like a lengthy, I don't even know what this is. Like, what is it going to look like?
Spaceman.
The space guy.
It might be
It's going to look like the aliens that are on...
X-Men.
I mean, I don't know. Yeah.
Who knows? Yeah, it's a very interesting study. I think they're definitely going down the right path there. We need to get more information.
Why is it so? Axiom, when they build each model, they have to consider these. And on the ISS, each module, if you're telling me that they have different strengths of radiation that come through, Axiom, I'm wondering if they can learn from the floating torso which module does the least amount of radiation penetration into the human, and kind of go towards that design, or if they're using the textile type stuff to say, how do we create these modules? Because I mean, I don't want to go to space and then not be able to have a baby, or if I do have a baby, it's going to turn out to be a mutant. I would love my little mutant. I'm not saying that. I would love he or she, no matter what they came out to look like. However, you know, it's a little scary.
Yeah, yeah.
Have you ever seen the babies born with teeth?
With teeth?
A full grow.
Teeth? What?
Yeah.
That's kind of...
They're actually, it's a little different, right? They're beautiful in their own right, and I will cuddle that little baby to death, but it is also a little, it takes me a minute.
Yeah.
You know, it's very different, so I'm curious.
It's interesting. Yeah. Yeah, who knows? But we definitely need more information on how radiation or being in space affects reproduction. It's definitely a big issue for each
Did I shock you with that?
Yeah, I'm still thinking about babies with teeth.
Axiom has the work cut out for them if they're going to make space for everyone. So they have to make suits that fit everybody. They have to think about their modules that they're putting up. They have to think about the food. And also food, not everyone likes pasta. Not everyone likes burgers. Not everyone likes, you know, so they're going to have a variety of a meal plan.
Right.
You know, things like that. They have to take care of people.
So can you cook pasta in space? How come they have to bring it pre-made?
They're gonna have to do ready to heat. I don't know. They don't have a cooking yet.
Well, basically you can't boil water on the space station. It'll just float away. What were you
There was one
petri dishes.
Oh yeah. So there was one of the astronauts on Axiom 2 launch. One of her missions or her experiments were to take a dish, and I don't really know much about it. It was cells of some kind, and she's laying them out really perfect. And she doesn't want to move it because you don't want the cells to like fall out or become like the layers that you're doing. And the commander, Peggy, she comes floating over, and she goes to take it, and the girl, no, you're gonna spill it, and she goes, you're in space, and she flips it, and like her face was just like,
right.
Yeah, it's very different.
Yeah, and that actually brings us to an interesting topic too, because one of the things that they're working on with their research projects is space motion sickness, and that's. Because everything's different. When you get into space, there's no up, there's no down, there's no gravity, which throws your whole body off. I mean, space motion sickness happens because your vestibular system's all messed up. Your inner ears aren't exposed to gravity anymore, and most of first-time astronauts experience space motion sickness and will likely throw up and maybe bring their pasta with them. Italy.
Can you imagine, like, I mean, of course, if it happened, you'd help your crew member, but just, like, floating?
Yeah.
Have you ever watched an astronaut brush their teeth in this ISS? I was watching one of the conferences, and they were teaching, like, showing how you brush your teeth. And when you go to spit out, you don't spit out. You take a cloth, and you start from here, like, you make it long ways, and you literally go, and it all ends up on a straight line in the cloth. You fold it, and you put it away. But the wet cloths that are clean, like if you just like, you shave and you go like this, whatever, and it's just a wet cloth, you put that, you hang it, and it absorbs the water back to reuse it. Because whatever water is on the ISS is what you have to use. So they absorb all the water. You don't just throw away a wet paper towel. Yeah. They'll suck the molecules back up.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorite experiments or projects that you've either been involved in or that you've heard of at Riddle?
At Riddle. So Embry-Riddle has a commercial space operations program, an undergraduate program that's been operational for a while, and a newer master's program that I participated in. And there's quite a bit of research that comes out of Embry-Riddle. We had a suborbital flight simulator for a while that they used to test suborbital trajectories, point-to-point travel, which means a suborbital space vehicle takes off and it doesn't reach an orbital velocity, so it doesn't actually achieve orbit and go around the planet, but it achieves a ballistic trajectory, which means it comes back to Earth, but it technically goes into space, and so there's been a lot of research with that. There was, our university partnered with the Possum Project, which is a nonprofit international research organization that are looking at clouds in the upper atmosphere, or the mesosphere, which they think are generated by meteors that enter and release water particles into the upper atmosphere. So there's some, and I think that's just so pilots, or so research scientists can fly suborbital vehicles. They just want to fly through clouds at high atmospheres. Atmosphere. But there's a bunch of other good research projects that come out of Embry-Riddle. What about you guys, Dr. Watt?
So mine is more, so you are College of Aviation? Is that what you're specialized in? You're working on finishing your PhD, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm on the other side of the campus. I'm College of Engineering, and in College of Engineering there is a biomedical systems track, and that's within the mechanical engineering department. So my specialty is, aside from robotics, so I have 3 labs. One is robotics, and in there we do lots of different unmanned systems, lots of different types of vehicles. We're working on a dog project actually right now. It's like a dog robot, and and we're looking at different types of end effectors and how it works on different types of terrain. So lots of different projects there. But I think today I want to talk more about my biomechanics lab. And one of the biomechanics lab, it does a lot of assistive devices for persons with disabilities. But then we have my third, which is more related to motion capture technology and space physiology. So in my lab, when talking about space, we do create microgravity because I can't fly to the ISS every time I have an experiment. You know, I tried calling someone and they didn't answer my phone call. I don't know what's going on. Someone needs to get on that. Okay, answer your phones. But I can't. So I have to create my own microgravity environment. And we use what's called a tilt table. And my tilt table also has connected to it a lower body negative pressure. And when someone says lower body negative pressure chamber, it's basically a really fancy word for a gigantic vacuum that goes around your waist and pulls on your body. And that pulling is basically simulating gravity. So turn that off and just tilt yourself on the bed. And when you tilt the bed at certain angles, I'll put a video of me up right now, and I'm tilting all the way, I think, to 45 degrees. And at different types of degrees of tilt, with your head down, it simulates different types of microgravity. So some researchers use a head down tilt of 6 degrees, some use 45 degrees, whatever that is. So in our lab right now, we are testing using this machine. We test intraocular pressures, we look at muscle atrophy, we look at bone density loss, different things like that, and the cardiovascular system. I really like our IOP project right now, which is the intraocular pressure. So in microgravity, lots of bad things happen. I mean, we talked about a lot of different things about what happens with your cells and radiation and things like that. More specifically, the fluids in your body, they shift. On Earth, your fluids are pulled towards your feet. When you go to microgravity, all of a sudden that pull from gravity is gone. And that means that all of the fluid in your body becomes equal, which means that now your heart, it doesn't have to work as hard to push the fluid back down towards your lower extremities, your legs, and pull it back up and do the whole circulation thing. It doesn't have to work hard, so it starts to shrink. Also, there are pressure now behind your eyes that it's not very familiar because we're not used to that amount behind our eyes. We're used to it down by our feet. And that's what creates what do they call it? Bird eyes? Like in the astronauts get really puffy faces and they look funny. But the pressure behind the eye starts to cause different types of vision losses and vision damage. It also could turn into glaucoma. So again, accelerated test bed. We could take what we're learning in space and apply it here on Earth to patients that have glaucoma. But in space specifically, we are starting to see that this pressure behind the eye affects men and women differently. Now, I'm trying to find out in the lab, is it an actual difference between men and women? Or is it that we don't have a lot of data on women because not a lot of women have gone to space, so the data is almost skewed in a way? I don't know. So we're going to, the first stage of the research is to get about 100 participants, put them at a head down tilt, start measuring their eye pressures, and then just see, is there a difference, what's going on, and then maybe create a computational model, and then figure out if it's differences. Why is it different? Are hormones different in space? Does a man react different than a woman? You know, all those things. So that's one. And then you can also look at the muscle atrophy. I've done a couple of projects with this. When you're on bed rest, if you just do bed rest, it takes 60 days to start to experience muscle atrophy. Have you ever broken a bone?
Yes. Once.
Did you get a hard cast put on it? Which bone?
Right.
Okay, so you actually probably wouldn't see it that on your wrist.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's not a lot of muscle around your wrist, but if you broke a leg and you wore a hard cast for a couple of months, and you take that hard cast off, your leg is super skinny compared to your other leg, and that's because it's not being used. Same thing happens in space, except for it happens within 1 to 2 weeks. So instead of waiting a few months, you can get this result within a few weeks. So that's another thing we test. Now, we don't want to just test in our lab the negative effects and see what happens. We want to come up with countermeasures. We don't want our astronauts and soon-to-be tourists to experience these things. We want to say, hey, use this to counteract that.
Right.
So we added the negative pressure chamber. We also added different types of exercise machines. Right now on the ISS there are 3 exercise machines. Are you familiar with which ones are on there?
ARED, Advanced Resistive Exercise
And what does the ARED do? I feel like I'm quizzing you. What does it do?
The ARED is for functional and strength training.
Yeah, strength training, muscle atrophy. Yeah, very good. And then there's the treadmill.
The treadmill.
And the treadmill is for
Colbert, I think it's called.
Yeah, but or T2. Yeah, for the most recent one. But and that one they use mostly for bone density.
Bone density impact. So you need impact on your bones to promote. There's cells called osteoclasts and osteoblasts. And osteoclasts, they go through your bones and they break down bone material. So the osteoblasts can come back in and rebuild your bones stronger. And what happens when you go to space is you stop having impact. You're not walking around under pressure. You're not impacting the earth. And your bones receive that message saying, we don't need to rebuild you anymore. But the osteoclasts still keep destroying your bone material. So what happens is you end up getting this form of osteoporosis, which means your bones are losing mass at a tremendous rate. And it's very dangerous for astronauts, especially when they have to spend a long time in space and then they return to a gravity environment where they can potentially break bones very easily on re-entry, descent and landing.
And again, something that on Earth we have patients that deal with osteoporosis all the time. So if we can look at it in an accelerated test bed, then we can come up with a solution faster to give to people here on Earth that struggle from that. Yeah. So the treadmill is supposed to counteract this. It doesn't though. They use to a point. It slows it, but it doesn't mitigate it completely. Right. Okay, so that is something that needs to be worked on and perfected. It needs to be optimized. So that's why we're researching it. And then the third one is this little cycle machine. What do you think the cycle machine is for?
Well, cardiovascular.
Very good, very good. You pass. I should call your advisor and say he deserves this PhD. You pass. So it's the cardiovascular. So to me, I have a patent on exercise device that I developed for the ISS. It hasn't gone up. Again, that phone call. I don't know what's going on. Answer your phones, NASA. All right, but anyway. So I'm thinking, why take 3 different machines? If I go to space, I really don't want to exercise for that long. I would rather just do one machine and get it done, right? So we're using this tilt bed test to come up with countermeasures that are a little bit more effective that hopefully can completely mitigate these negative effects versus slow them down. Because again, on re-entry, we don't want broken bones. We don't want people to have to, what do they do when they land? They go straight to a couch? Yeah. So we don't want that. We want them to be able to say, okay, I went to this laboratory, I did some research, I came back, and I'm good to go again to continue my normal life. Especially if tourists are doing this. I mean, look, going to space is phenomenal. But when you have to come back to your normal job, you can't call your boss and say, I'm sorry, I can't walk. Or, hey, I lost my vision. It's not doable. It's not feasible. So we have to come up with countermeasures.
Right. And in these short missions, 2 weeks, or for space tourism where they might be going up for a couple of days, it may not impact you as much. But as we've been talking about...
2 weeks though, you do.
2 weeks.
2 weeks you do. 2 weeks you do. You start seeing the negative effects. You do.
Yeah, but it's not going to affect you on the same level as an astronaut that's been up there for 6 months. Or when we start talking about deep space missions where you're going to Mars or the moon. And even on the moon where you have 1/6 of Earth's gravity, you're going to still experience...
You still experience it. So.
Mars, which is 1/3 of Earth's gravity, you're going to have bone loss. You're going to have muscle atrophy.
Have you done, I know you're a pilot, so I know you've experienced zero-G, but have you ever been in the back of a plane, not strapped down? I did the NASA vomit comet, and they went through, first they did the zero-G for all of our experiments, and after we did what we were supposed to do, they were like, hey, have some fun on the last 3 parabolas. And the pilot, what they did was like, we're going to simulate full microgravity. And we were floating. I was doing somersaults and stuff. Sweet. It was really cool. But then he was like, hey, I'm going to show you what moon would feel like. And then I'm going to show you what Mars would feel like. So we were doing moon-like push-ups. And we would come back down, whoop, and then come back down. It was a significant difference. When I hear numbers, I'm like, oh, it's not that bad. But when I experienced it, I was like, oh no, my body would totally atrophy on this. It would have a serious. So I want to thank everybody for joining us, and until next time, keep dreaming big and looking up. This is Dr. Walk.
And Timmy too.
Yeah.